Rich CEO falls for his maid. She gets pregnant with twins. Their love story will make you cry. The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor as Marcus Wellington stared at the pregnancy test in his trembling hands. But it wasn't his wife holding it. It was Elena, his quiet, unassuming maid who had been cleaning his mansion for 3 years. The woman he had shared one passionate night with 6 months ago, when his marriage was crumbling and his world felt like it was falling apart. Now, as she stood before him with tears streaming down her face and her hand protectively placed over her growing belly, everything he thought he knew about his life was about to change forever. If this story has already captured your attention, please show your support for Trillionaire in Love by hitting that like button, sharing this video with someone who needs to hear this story, commenting your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible love stories that will touch your heart. Marcus Wellington had built his empire from nothing. Starting with a small tech company in his garage, he had grown it into a billion-dollar corporation that employed thousands. His penthouse overlooked the city skyline. His cars filled a garage that was bigger than most people's homes, and his bank account had more zeros than most people could count. But despite all his material success, his personal life was a disaster. His marriage to Victoria, a socialite who cared more about appearances than their relationship, had been dead for years. They lived like strangers in their own home, sharing nothing but a last name and a facade for the media. Elena Martinez had come into his life 3 years ago through a domestic service agency. She was different from the other staff, quiet, hardworking, and genuinely kind. While other employees seemed to work for him solely for the generous paycheck, Elena seemed to care about creating a warm, comfortable environment. She would leave small touches that made his cold mansion feel more like a home: fresh flowers in his office, his favorite coffee perfectly prepared, and a gentle smile that somehow made his stressful days more bearable. The night that changed everything happened during one of the worst periods of Marcus's life. Victoria had just served him with divorce papers, demanding half of everything he had worked for. His business was facing a major lawsuit that threatened to destroy his reputation. He felt like he was drowning, and Elena found him in his study at 2 a.m., surrounded by empty whiskey bottles and legal documents. She didn't say much that night. She simply sat with him, listened as he poured out his heart about feeling like a failure despite all his success. For the first time in years, someone saw him not as Marcus Wellington the billionaire, but as Marcus the man who was broken and afraid. In that vulnerable moment, boundaries were crossed, and what started as comfort became something neither of them had planned. The next morning brought regret and awkwardness. Marcus, embarrassed by his weakness, became cold and distant. Elena, understanding the impossibility of their situation, never brought up that night. They returned to their professional relationship as if nothing had happened, but both carried the weight of those stolen hours in their hearts. Now, 6 months later, Elena stood in his office with the pregnancy test, and Marcus felt his carefully constructed world crumbling. "Are you sure?" he asked, though he could see the answer in her eyes. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "The doctor confirmed it today. Twins, Marcus. I'm carrying twins." The challenges that followed seemed insurmountable. Victoria, who had been ready to finalize their divorce amicably, flew into a rage when she discovered the pregnancy. She hired the most ruthless lawyers in the city, determined to destroy Marcus in court and take everything from him. She leaked the story to the media, painting Marcus as a wealthy predator who had taken advantage of his vulnerable employee. The scandal exploded across every news outlet and social media platform. "Billionaire CEO impregnates Maid," screamed the headlines. The company's stock price plummeted as investors lost confidence. Board members called for his resignation. Protesters gathered outside his office building, and his business partners began distancing themselves from him. Elena faced her own hell. The media portrayed her as a gold-digging opportunist who had seduced her wealthy employer for money. She lost her job not just with Marcus, but found herself unemployable as word spread throughout the domestic service industry. Her small apartment became a prison as paparazzi camped outside, harassing her for comments and photos. The stress of the situation made her pregnancy high risk, and she was hospitalized twice for complications. Marcus's family disowned him. His parents, who had always prioritized their social standing above everything else, cut him off completely. His sister, who had been his closest confidant, refused to speak to him. Friends he had known for decades suddenly became too busy to return his calls. The isolation was crushing, but it also brought clarity. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus was forced to confront what truly mattered to him. Stripped of his social circle and facing the possibility of losing his business, he realized that the only person who had ever truly seen and accepted him was Elena. Not Elena the maid, but Elena the woman who had held him while he cried, who had never asked him for anything, and who was now carrying his children while facing the world's judgment alone. The turning point came when Elena collapsed at the grocery store from stress and exhaustion. Marcus, who had been keeping his distance on the advice of his lawyers, rushed to the hospital. Seeing her pale and fragile in that hospital bed, with machines monitoring the heartbeats of their unborn children, he made a decision that would define the rest of his life. He fired his legal team and called a press conference. Standing before a room full of hostile reporters, Marcus did something that billionaires rarely do. He told the truth. He admitted that his marriage had been over long before Elena came into his life. He acknowledged that their night together had been a mistake in timing, but not in feeling. He revealed his genuine love for Elena and his commitment to their children, regardless of what it cost him. "I've spent my entire life building an empire," he said, his voice steady despite the flashing cameras and shouted questions. "But I never built a home. I never built real love. Elena gave me both in one night, and I was too afraid and too proud to admit it. I'm not afraid anymore." The media frenzy didn't stop, but the narrative began to shift. When Elena was released from the hospital, Marcus was there every day. He attended every doctor's appointment, held her hand during the ultrasounds, and marveled at the images of their twins on the screen. He hired the best medical team to ensure her safety and the baby's health. Victoria's attempts to destroy him in court backfired when it became clear that Marcus was genuinely committed to Elena and their children. The prenuptial agreement Victoria had insisted on before their marriage actually protected most of Marcus's assets, and her vindictive behavior in the media turned public opinion against her. The business challenges were more complex. Marcus had to step down as CEO temporarily while the board decided his future. Many investors pulled out, and several major contracts were cancelled. But Marcus discovered something surprising. Many of his employees rallied around him. They had worked with him long enough to know his character, and they respected his honesty in handling the crisis. Elena, despite her own struggles, became his greatest source of strength. As her pregnancy progressed and she grew stronger, she showed a resilience and wisdom that humbled him. She helped him see that losing some of his wealth wasn't a tragedy. It was an opportunity to rebuild his life on a foundation of authenticity rather than just ambition. Money can be earned again, she told him one evening as they felt the twins kicking inside her belly. But trust, love, and family, those are the real treasures, and we have all of that. When the twins were born, a boy and a girl they named Sophia and Santiago, Marcus held them in his arms and understood what true wealth meant. These tiny beings, born from a moment of vulnerability and love, were worth more than every dollar he had ever earned. The road to rebuilding wasn't easy. Marcus had to mortgage several properties to keep his business afloat. He and Elena lived modestly compared to his previous lifestyle, but their small home was filled with more laughter and love than his mansion had ever known. He worked harder than ever, but now he had a reason that went beyond personal ambition. He was building a legacy for his children. Gradually, Marcus's reputation began to recover. His honesty during the crisis, combined with his proven business acumen, earned back the respect of many investors. The company, though smaller than before, became more profitable and more ethical under his renewed leadership. He implemented policies that supported working families, including comprehensive child care and parental leave, changes inspired by his own experience. Elena, once her children were older, started her own small business creating organic baby products. Her experience as a working mother and her natural intelligence, which had always been underestimated because of her job as a maid, flourished when given the chance to grow. Marcus invested in her business not as charity, but because he recognized her brilliant potential. Years later, as Marcus watched his children play in their backyard while Elena tended her garden, he reflected on the journey that had brought them there. He had lost millions of dollars, dozens of so-called friends, and a lifestyle that had once seemed essential. In return, he had gained a family that loved him unconditionally, a partner who knew his worst moments and chose to stay, and children who looked at him with pure adoration regardless of his net worth. The scandal that had once threatened to destroy him became the catalyst for the best period of his life. Sofia and Santiago grew up in a home filled with love, where they learned that true success wasn't measured in bank accounts, but in the quality of relationships and the impact you have on others' lives. Marcus never regretted that vulnerable night when Elena had found him broken in his study. It had led to challenges that tested every aspect of his character, but it had also led to a love story that proved some mistakes are actually the universe redirecting you toward your true purpose. Their love story became an inspiration to others, showing that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come from the most complicated circumstances. It proved that real love doesn't discriminate based on social class, bank accounts, or job titles. It finds two souls who are meant to be together and creates a path, no matter how difficult. As Marcus tucked Sofia and Santiago into bed each night, reading them stories and kissing their foreheads, he knew he had discovered something that no amount of money could ever buy, a family built on authentic love, tested by adversity, and strengthened by choosing each other every single day. The greatest treasure wasn't in his bank account or his business empire. It was in the quiet moments with Elena, watching their children grow and knowing that they had created something beautiful from what the world had tried to tear apart. Love, it turned out, really could conquer or even the judgment of society and the complexities of crossing social boundaries. Their story reminds us that sometimes the most unexpected paths lead to the most meaningful destinations, and that true love has the power to transform not just our own lives, but the lives of everyone around us. If this story touched your heart and inspired you to believe in the power of true love, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave a comment telling us your thoughts about Marcus and Elena's journey, and subscribe to Trillionaire in Love for more incredible stories that celebrate love's power to overcome any obstacle. Your support means everything to us, and together we can spread more love and inspiration to the world.